Sorry.
with,
Okay, that's done.
okay, they've been tasked with helping us establish a framework by which we can um, run through a tool called the CARROT, Community Agriculture Resilience tool. And it is a task we took on at the behest of former select board person Rita Higgins, who now works as the food system coordinator at the Marion Institute. And she's on the South Coast Farm Policy Action Council and has gotten 5 different counties, plus Nantucket, to do this 101 indicators within 7 themes to highlight um, gaps and strengths in Nantucket's food resilience. And they've been here working on this for now 6 weeks-ish. They're doing their final presentation next week, Tuesday from 1 to 3. It's available on the town Zoom. They and 4 other groups will be doing their presentations. Your guys is 5th, I think. They've interviewed some 23 people to get views on these different indicators as requested by the tool. And our task, once they leave us their enormous cache of information that they've collected, is to then go through the indicators and adjust them to be specific and more germane to Nantucket's environment, and score ourselves on these 101 indicators. So I'm going to circulate to you guys what the indicators are, because it seems to me like, even though I doubt we'll get any, it's too late to request funding from the town to, have a budget for the ag department and then use that as part of the means of conducting the, it's supposed to take 2 months, almost 18 months. And I don't have that time. So we're gonna try and accelerate it. But suffice it to say that in their discussion,
What takes 18 months? The survey?
they said it would take maybe, this is being done all over the country. Part of the conversation was with a group in Western Mass called Hilltop Communities. And you guys feel free to jump in, but they've already completed theirs. They're really kind of a small niche and very well organized. They have a food policy council. Rita is working on their county, which is Bristol County. The tool was created by, sort of like large Agra in Indiana, maybe University of Indiana, and some big group out there that created this thing. And I think the tool seems to be a little bit more adapted to larger agricultural institutions. What we have discovered is that there is no resilience plan here. If we have incidents that go on for weeks at a time, like that harbor freezes over, or there's a longshoreman strike, the boats don't run, or God forbid, the Stop and Shop has a cyber attack and they can't order any food,
Yeah.
we're screwed out here.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, or Stop and Shop goes out of business, which seems, well, where they get sold or who knows. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of possibilities. We don't have any kind of food storage on the island.
Mm.
The number of farmers we have could not possibly make up anything we need. I don't know, we learned that the 24,000 pounds per week of food gets shipped over from the Greater Boston Food Bank. I mean, there's a lot of data that we have unearthed towards looking at some of the issues that we're facing. We know that people like John Bartlett really don't want any policy. They actually don't want any more farmers. We're kind of getting in their lane. We've just learned all kinds of things. So there's a lot of people really working hard to try and figure out food insecurity. But in terms of food resilience,
Mm.
it's never been a priority of the town. They don't have anything, any way of looking at it, nor any, I think this has to be kind of created and put on their lap and give them some recommendations. hopefully somebody will then do something with it. But this is sort of where I'm going with what should we as a what kinds of projects should we as a commission look at or take on? We brought up a lot of different issues in the last year. And it's really hard to get traction on following up on any of them. You've got a group that has now inoculated mice so that we're trying to reduce the incidence of deer tick on the island. Nothing being done with the deer. It's deer hunting season right now. I only heard one gun this morning. I'm not sure why there's so few hunters, but there sure are a shitload of deer. I mean, we've talked about deer, we talked about deer donation, we talked about trying to get the entire island of Nantucket designated as a deer preserve, which would mean that since they're being farmed on the preserve, that you could then kill and process those and sell that meat, because it has to be a farmed product so you can sell it. We all know that deer are not farmed, but they have nowhere to go, so it's pretty much a closed loop. Anyway, we've talked about a lot of different things and really haven't pursued a whole lot. We don't have a budget, but it seems to me that this would be something that, the pursuit and response and delivery of a scored carrot would be a reason to request some sort of funding from the town to compensate us for the work we're gonna have to do. And I don't know if you guys have a view on that. So if you do, speak up.
Can you go into a little more detail about what work has been done? So has the survey been started in some abbreviated form, but the full 18-month project hasn't been completed?
Hey, hi. Ella Potenza joins the room.
Can't see us.
Yeah. You've
Hello.
got Jacob there. And there's a chair there, and a chair there. Why don't you guys sort of give Jacob and Kelly a quick overview of the kind of work you've done and where you think, whether you think it is an 18-month project or something like that.
Okay, so yeah, I guess like you brought up the Massachusetts Hilltown Survey. It's worth noting that our community who did it in 3 months. So like the NAFSIM, so the North American Food Systems Network, kind of the group that put together this carrot tool, they gave the estimate of like 240 hours spread across 18 months. So like that's looks very different for a lot of different communities, especially when the tool is kind of being piloted. So what we have done, how Rita Higgins has been doing it, she's been splitting up the entire assessment process into 3 parts. So that's preparation, data collection, and scoring. So what us WPI students have been doing is the preparation portion. So they were very clear that they wanted the data collection and the scoring to be done by community leaders. And as such, we are not from Nantucket, so we don't really have that community context to understand, say, like if a stakeholder gets brought up in an interview, we wouldn't necessarily know what they bring to the table more than Posey and Ella, for example. But the idea of what we've been doing is we've been trying to figure out who knows what on the island. Carrot is a tool, unlike other food system assessments that focus more on like quantitative data. Carrot is a lot more qualitative focused, so it looks at policies, practices, and programs instead of just like USDA Census of Agriculture data. So a lot of what we've been doing is like generating discussion in terms of like interviewing a bunch of stakeholders on the island, figuring out who has what information. Because the idea for the preparation phase is to establish a core group of stakeholders that Sustainable can rely on when they move forward with the data collection in the scoring phase, which we will be off island for. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that, but that's kind of where we're at. We're very like preparation, want to assemble this core group of stakeholders that has like a wide array of expertise so we can leverage that and thoroughly answer these indicators. but we are not answering the indicators ourselves. We're just trying to figure out who can. So I don't know if you guys want to.
And in addition to that, we also led a focus group, and during the focus group, we had it with two individuals, and we just ran through one of the themes of Carrot, just to identify like how the wording would sound, and if there was like, because it's like, once you read through the indicators, it's rarely repetitive, like they say policy, practices, and programs like a million times. And they use some terms that not everyone's like familiar with, so, through that focus group, we were able to identify those things, and so when you guys start your data collection phase, you can be able to adjust it.
Right, or like be prepared for some of the things you might run into, or I think something that I took away from that focus group is like there's a glossary in the back of the Carrot assessment, but then also we're gonna have our own definitions for those words and what it means to us. And I think that's important to establish, because other folks using the Carrot might define those words differently, and then, you know, we can like have another conversation with Rita or Navson about what they think those words mean. Like producer was one that's like,
Yeah.
well, at what level are farmers producers? Are business owners that are selling produce producers? That kind of stuff. So that's important.
Kelly, do you have any thoughts at all on this? Because, you know, given your background with the food pantry and now with Process First / NPR, NRP.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like work that's, and it's kind of funny, we talked about how, and when we had our attempted last meeting, we talked about how kind of disparate some of this information is. I think some of it's already kind of been done, and it would be, I wonder if that would just save you a little legwork if you guys were to proceed with this. Additionally, I'm just wondering, like, is Carrot kind of universally like applicable to different communities, or like how from your guys' work or experience are you guys seeing that Carrot is at least applicable to Nantucket? And if not, are there like tweaks that you guys are there tweaks that could be made or that you think need to be made?
Yeah, definitely. So like from the beginning of our research, we found that the tool, so it was developed in Indiana by the North American Food Systems Network in partnership with Indiana University. And the farms out there, they're a lot larger scale and they're way more like industrialized. So there's a lot more policy that goes into those kind of farming practices rather than here in Nantucket. It's more individual and smaller scale. So things like that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that the questions, the indicators aren't applicable. I think they need to be tweaked, and there's no reason we can't make adjustments to the indicators to be more specific and germane to our island community and our issues. So they're good sort of jumping off points. And once you come up with a score, and there's a lot of nuance around what does the score mean, then there's an ample place to take notes and provide context for why you gave it the score or why it's not applicable and how we might maybe redraft it or maybe make a subheading that would make it more appropriate for us. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, we were tasked to do this by the Marion Institute, because Rita is having 5 other counties in the southeast of Massachusetts do the exact same thing. So Bristol, Plymouth, Barnstable, Essex, Dukes, and Nantucket.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're all going through the same process, and, you know, then that entire cohort, we might find that we have enough in common that, you know, there's tweaks that are applicable to all of us.
And something
Yeah.
this
Oh, go
morning
ahead.
that they're planning to do this Carrot assessment, and then house all of that information somewhere, and then maybe do the assessment every 5 years or so, so that there's
Keeps it
updated, current information. So it might be where, yeah, we use the language this time, but then next time they take those recommendations into consideration and maybe reword it for the next time. I think things like that also, like, they might not reword it for this year or whatever, you know, we might still go through with it as is, but they can take those recommendations in the future, because we're not just gonna do this one time, you know, this is, I think, supposed to be a place that changes as our community changes, and, you know, if we have action on some of the gaps that this brings up, then our score is gonna change, you know? If we do have a disaster plan, that's a place where we can kind of show the steps and show how long it took, and I think there'll be a home for all of this information to live. And I think Rita mentioned that she's gonna be working with Matt and with Process First to develop that. So I think that's great that it's folks that are involved on Nantucket that are gonna continue to be involved after even this session of Carrot. So we'll get to watch it change.
Yeah, I
So I'm
wonder
sure
if there's like,
towns are gonna have recommendations and things that work best for them, or this didn't really work. If it said this, it would work, but
I'm wondering if there's like regional attributes that like would be helpful to identify in the beginning so that like across the 5 towns that Acorn is possibly being implemented in, those questions are somewhat uniform.
yeah, like in Indiana, they're probably not dependent on fisheries in the way that we are on the East Coast, and there's a lot of,
Mhm.
you know, their seasonality is different, and there's a lot of differences. But maybe they want it to be something that's applicable across the whole US, so then we just have to go broader, or, you know, we make it applicable just to our Southeast Massachusetts, and then we can make the questions even more particular. I don't know.
I know, well, you look at the food shed, right? Okay. We don't have any livestock per se. There's 5 pigs on the island, maybe 15 sheep, a couple of goats, and a bunch of turkeys and chickens. Oh, they were not pardoned, they're not there. But,
They got
you know, there's a couple that got off. We have a fishing fleet and a charter fleet that goes out all summer long, but we don't have a commercial dock, and those fish, if they're too big, they have to be taken over to Chatham to be sold. We don't have enough shuckers to shuck all the scallops. And so there's, you know, allegedly people slashing tires over,
My God.
over, you know, issues that happen around scarcity or abundance of scallops and the pricing. And so these are all these weird little things that crop up here. I think Rita actually mentioned, is there enough commercial dock space for the fishing fleet on Martha's Vineyard? Well, you know, these are the kinds of questions that would really only be germane to coastal communities. But if only we could get more of the local seafood into our, you know, that didn't have to go to Chatham or could be brought in, and the middlemen were cut out of it, and we could actually have fish sold at the market, for example. Like, why can't we sell eggs in the market? What are these arcane rules that have been vested on us by our Board of Health that makes it so difficult to access the food that's available? It's kind of nuts. So whether there are policies and procedures, the answer may be yes, we have policies, but they're completely dismissive of locally grown food, and that should change. And it would be nice if we could, you know, get a concerned citizens group together to get select board to help us come up with more common sense rules around some of these arcane things that the Board of Health has come up with. Just me talking out loud. Anyway, I feel like the problem we have with our commission is the 3 of us, you know, come up with concrete ideas, and other members come up with, should we start a 4-H club, which I think would be great, but, you know, who's gonna actually spearhead that? But this seems like a project that we could probably all get behind, I would think, and may be able to get the town take it seriously and take it on, and then we could request maybe even some budget to try and help us get it done in a fashion that would be an actionable plan that the town could take on.
You mean answering the assessment, or you mean implementing an action plan?
I don't think we're here to implement the action plan, but I think if we're gonna get a good grounding of the assessment, it doesn't come free. It comes at the expense of, I mean, it needs organization, and I think budget towards that would help.
When we were speaking earlier about getting funding, was that just for her county or was that supposed to be dispersed among?
She was initially talking about the 6 counties that she asked to do this. But I don't think she's gotten any funding at all yet, so it could well be that there won't be any coming from the sources she thought would be useful, and it would be incumbent upon us if we think it could be funded somewhere to ask for it. I mean, maybe Remain would help, I don't know, like,
Is that $40,000? Is that just, would that be like toward like salaries? Like, I don't get where the cost is coming
yeah, it's
from.
like,
Salaries?
Staff time to conduct the
taking
assessment.
time, away from,
Yeah, like it's a step, it's not part of any of the programs that we already have budgets for, it's a new project. So yeah, like all the hours that we're putting in.
How many, is there guidelines on how many people are supposed to be surveyed?
No, there were 7 themes. And these guys conducted roughly 23 or 24 interviews, and they were we cast a pretty wide net. Uh-oh, what is this? Inside out, what? I don't know what to do about that.
I think we're still on.
Can everyone still hear each other though?
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, you're still there.
So let's just boil it down to the people that WPI students thought would be useful to have as a core group going forward, as part of the focus group. But it shows you just kind of like the net that was cast. And that would include Vince Murphy, Matt Hafenreffer, John Bartlett, Aidan Feeney, Chuck Larson, Jericho Melly, Ann Doherty, Brooke Moore, Rita Higgins, Cormac Collier, Rachel Freeman were some of the names. But we've also talked to like Dan Southey, Pauline Proch,
The boards.
Abby Slow, I mean, we talked to all the farmers. We talked to, literally all the farmers.
Fits.
Yeah, Ruth Fitz.
Ruth, obviously. So, we really talked to a bunch of people, and they all had good perspectives, and these guys took excellent notes. We have the entire file in a Google Drive, or will, and so going forward, I think what we're gonna wanna do is circulate to the people that it was deemed would be a good core group of stakeholders. Circulate the